I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Tell these salty motherfuckers to tell the truth. Tell politicians to give up the rooms. Tell silent voters to stand up to the booth.
God, it's me. Can you hear my plea? Feeling like I'm lost in this world, can't you see? Demons creeping in, trying to take control of me. But I'm just trying to find the light, trying to break free. I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. But why you keep forgetting me? What did I do? Trying to have a convo, but you starting to preach. Feeling like I'm on a leash. Can't find no peace, find no peace. Living in hell, can't you hear my plea? I'm suffocating, can't you see? Why you let these false prophets roam free? While the real ones suffer, can't you see? I'm not perfect, God, neither are you. Why you keep targeting me? What did I do? Trying to have a convo, but you starting to preach. Feel like I'm on a leash, can't find no peace.
Hardest battles, strongest soldiers, greatest burden, broadest shoulders. Pushing up just like these boulders. This conflict like it's water, so this mercy, take my chalice. Seeking grace through all this malice. All of these salty motherfuckers could give up.
Politics and sinners, they all the same. Got me stuck in this endless game. And I won't give up, won't play the role. Gotta do what's best
for my soul.
I'm not perfect, God. Neither are you. Tell these salty motherfuckers to tell the truth. Tell these politicians to give up the room. Tell silent voters to stand up to the booth. Living wild but truthfully free. God keep on watching over me. Take my pleas and keep the receipts. I just want all of humanity.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. And welcome to the Urban Conservative. This morning I want to talk about the champion hustle, power clients, and quiet cash. But before I get into all that, we always play independent music to start off with. And this morning I got something new for y'all. Belly Gang, Cushington. Sorry, mama.
Say busy, say busy, say busy.
Just a letter to the lady who had me. You know what I'm saying? Who gave birth to me in the hospital. She ain't really my mama though. You know what I'm saying? Turn it up in the earphone. Yeah. I'ma apologize to you. I feel like I got in your way. I don't know. Hey, look, I don't know too much. I know you left me when I was just a little baby. Sometimes I think about that shit. I be like, damn, that shit crazy. How you raised them other kids and you ain't check on your baby. I know you had some other kids, but how you ain't check on your ladies? People ask me how I feel about it when we converse. I used to tell them I ain't care cause you had left me at birth. But when my daddy seen my eyes, that nigga knew it was worse. I used to ask if you was alive, I pictured you in a hearse. I pictured you at your worst. Now picture you in this verse. Now picture me as a little kid trying to figure out what I'm worth. Now picture me as a little kid trying to figure out if I'm cursed. Now picture me as a little kid trying to figure out if I'm hurt. I'm sorry, mama. I just wanna apologize to you. I never meant to hurt. I hate how you went through this shit. I never meant to make you leave. I hate how I even had to do a song like this. Out my closet. One more time. Hey, I'm sorry, mom. How you leave your motherfucking baby? I never meant to hurt you. Just by himself like that. I never meant to make you leave. I was supposed to be all you had. Cleaning out my closet. Hey, hey. You know I started to run soon as I found out how to walk. You know I started with guns soon as I found out how to pout. You know I started the fun soon as I found out about the law. You know my son, your quote-unquote grandson, he finally can talk. You know he autistic, he got a slight delay in his speech. I think it's God punished me for how I play in these streets. You know I do my thing, I get them bricks, yay for the cheek. You know I changed the game, I take my life and say it on beats. You know my daddy said that he was gonna be there, but he wasn't. He dropped me off in Adamville, and I was raised by my cousin. You know Pam and Sally took me and treated me as they own. Gave me a bed with burning sheets, I had a room in they home. I met your mama one time, she say you a bundle of mine. And I guess she my grandma, but I ain't feel like she mine. And she told me you wasn't shit, and I ain't feel like she lying. And she told me she be crying, but I ain't feel like she crying. I'm sorry, mom, I wanna apologize. grateful, but it's like, it's just how I feel, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I don't really got no relationship with you, so I don't really give a fuck, but it is what it is. Boy, as my little boy got older, the more I took care of him, the more I was there for him, the more mad I got at you, cause you couldn't do that for me.
That was Belly Cushington. Sorry, mama. Cleaning out my closet. And I want to get into something that happened yesterday. It was a resolution that Steve Drzowski had brought into the Minnesota Senate. And it was against Bobby Joe Champion. And I want to talk about that this morning. So I'm going to play that first. And I don't know if I'll play the whole thing. I'll play it all the way through and then talk. But I want you to watch this resolution and watch the interactions, because something came out this morning I'm going to talk about that I believe that they all do. We shouldn't really be pointing fingers, because they all do it. It doesn't matter if it's DFL, it doesn't matter if they're Republican. And at this point, I feel like it's a pity pat game and a deflection from getting to the real answers and getting to the real problems that's in our Senate, and that's in our House, and that's in our state capitol. So with that being said, here is a motion in the resolution to Bobby Joe Champion not to be the Speaker of the House anymore, or the Speaker of the Senate. So with that being said,
Number 34 will be referred to the Committee on Rules and Administration. And members, there's no action that is required there. Senator Jaskowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, is there a resolution at the desk?
The Secretary will report the resolution at the desk.
Senator Drazkowski introduces Senate Resolution Number 35, a Senate resolution relating to the removal of the Senate President.
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move adoption of Senate Resolution Number 35.
Senator Drazkowski, the pages are distributing the resolution. We'll take a moment. Senator Drazkowski moves adoption of Senate Resolution Number 35 to your resolution. Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President and members, I bring today Senate Resolution Number 35. I'll read it to you. It is short. The resolution says, be it resolved by the Senate of the State of Minnesota and pursuant to Minnesota statutes, Section 3.06, Subdivision 1, the Senate President Bobby Joe Champion be removed as Senate President, and that the removal be effective immediately upon adoption of this resolution. Mr. President, that is the resolution. I would like to say a few words about it. Mr. President, it is our responsibility as members to maintain the integrity of the Minnesota Senate. We have established rules of ethical conduct designed to do just that. Mr. President, Rule 56 of Senate Rules outlines in 56.1 that members must adhere to the highest standard of ethical conduct as embodied in Minnesota Constitution, state law, and our rules. And Mr. President, 56.3 says improper conduct includes conduct that violates a rule or administrative policy of the Senate, that violates accepted norms of Senate behavior that betrays the public trust or that tends to bring the Senate into dishonor or disrepute. Mr. President, our rule, Senate Rule number 56.4, says that members of the Senate must disclose potential conflicts of interest in the discharge of their senatorial duties. And if we will look closer at the Minnesota Senate policies for senators and staff, Mr. President, that are referred to, that I just referred to in the rules, it even gives more detail. Senators and staff are required to avoid actions that might impair your independence of judgment or give the appearance of impropriety. And the points included there include: put the public interest ahead of your own personal advancement and financial interest. It also includes: decide all matters based on their merits, free from improper influences. And also directs us to disclose conflicts of interest and refrain where practical from participating in decisions. The next section of the policies handbook says to avoid situations that could be disrespectful of the institution and the public. We are directed in this ethics policy to act honestly, fairly, and openly so that others can rely in good faith on your words and actions, on our words and actions. And then it directs: do not use your position to gain privileges or special treatment. Mr. President, we have currently a president that is embroiled in a Senate ethics complaint that stems from a wide array of articles that have been written throughout this state in the past 3.5 weeks, beginning with the article that was presented in the Minnesota Reformer on April 4th, nearly 3 weeks ago. The title of that says, DFL Senate President steered millions in public funds to a legal client. And we saw dozens and dozens of articles, social media posts, and other types of media that has spread this discovery throughout the entire state and country. Mr. President, that article itself talked about a bill that the President, as a member of this body, wrote to take taxpayer money, Mr. President, and send it to a nonprofit organization. The nonprofit organization was called 21 Days of Peace. That bill, Senate File 2970, was authored by Senator Champion in 2023 for $3 million of the people's money to go to a nonprofit organization, again called 21 Days of Peace. It's pointed out in the article that one of the directors, or maybe the executive director of 21 Days of Peace, Jerry McAfee, who not only was the pastor of Senator Champion's church, but under a similar name was directed a nonprofit organization. So Mr. McAfee and his wife, Beverly, both in 2003 contributed $1,000 each to President Champion's campaign. Mr. President, there's another nonprofit organization that Senator Champion authored a bill for this year in Senate File 2425 to the Stair Step Foundation. It was $1 million grant to this nonprofit organization. In 2023, 3 people from the organization, Alfred Babington, the president's CEO, his wife Anna Babington Johnson, and Sharon Thompson, the director of programs, all 3 of them sent contributions of $1,000 to President Champion's campaign. There was another nonprofit that Senator Champion wrote a bill to give the people's money to, Mr. President, called the Hennepin County Community Action Partnership. And in 2023, he authored a bill, Senate File 2985, that appropriated $6 million to the Hennepin County Community Action Partnership. The executive director, and I believe it was his wife with the same last name, Clarence Hightower and Beverly Hightower, each contributed the maximum contribution of $1,000 each to Senator Champion's campaign. It is to note that this same organization, Mr. President, Hennepin County Community Action Partnership, was involved in a huge scandal during the Dayton administration. There, the executive director, Bill Davis, went to jail for misuse of funds. And Senator Jeff Hayden's wife was also included in the scandal at the time. It was a huge scandal. I remember of it. And there were a number of other high-powered Democrats on the board that eventually resigned. $6 million. Mr. President, there was another nonprofit that Senator Champion wrote a bill to give $10 million of the people's money to, Build Wealth Minnesota. The bill was written in 2023, Senate File 805. It included, or the CEOs or the founder of this organization, this nonprofit organization, David McGee and his, I'm assuming his wife, Regina McGee, each in 2023, Mr. President, contributed the maximum contribution of $1,000 each to Senator Champion's campaign.
Mr. President, point of order.
Senator Latz, for what reason?
Point of order.
Mr. President, I rise to a point of order under Senate Rules 30.
Of course, the white man come save the black man. Ain't that about a bitch?
Member is limited to 10 minutes. It seems to me Senator Drazkowski has met or exceeded the 10 minutes authorized for him to debate this resolution.
The point of order is sustained.
So sorry.
Senator Murphy.
Senator Murphy.
Thank you,
Mr. President.
Thank you,
Mr. President, I move to
Mr.
appeal the
President.
decision.
Mr. President,
Mhm.
pursuant to Rule 6.3, I move that Resolution Number 35 be sent to the Rules Committee, and I ask for a roll call.
Mr. President.
Senator Drazkowski appealed the ruling of the chair prior to the motion being made. Senator Drazkowski appeals the ruling of the chair.
Mr. President.
Senator Miller.
Mr. President, under Rule 41.2, I wish to be excused from voting. Members, as a member of the Subcommittee on Ethical Conduct and with a pending ethics complaint, I do not feel that it is in the best interest of the body for me to take a vote on this, so I wish to be excused from voting on this matter.
The request to be recused requires a voice vote. Senator Miller requests to be recused from the vote on sustaining the judgment of the president. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion is adopted. Are there other members who wish to speak?
Mr. President.
Senator Pratt.
Parliamentary inquiry. Can you tell me how many minutes Senator Drazkowski had been speaking?
These niggas, that's the shit I hate.
Senator Pratt. Senator Drazkowski began speaking at 1:15 Central Standard Time. The point of order was raised at 1:27. Without further discussion, do you wish a roll call, Senator?
Mr. President, I do ask for a roll call.
Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Senator Drazkowski has the
Mr.
floor.
President, I ask for a roll call.
Senator Pappas.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. President. You'd asked if anyone else wanted to be excused and then called on Senator Pratt, so I didn't get a chance to request for the same reason that Senator Miller is
Look at
asking
Bobby,
to
he
be
even look
excused.
nervous as hell.
If Senator Kunish would
He's
also
like, God
to
damn
make a
it, this
request,
shit
if
came
I'm allowed
out,
to
man.
make
I'm
that
fucking
formal.
mad. Can't get the North Side no money no more. Well, you weren't getting the North Side organizations, your friends, your buddies.
We will take the vote on the Pappas motion. Any other senators wishing to be recused need to make that motion themselves. Senator Pappas has requested to be recused from the vote on sustaining the judgment of the president. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is adopted. Senator
Motion is
Matthews.
adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. I make the same motion for myself for the same reasons. Thank you.
All those in favor of the Matthews motion to be recused from voting on sustaining the judgment of the president, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is adopted. Senator Kunish.
And I also ask to be recused from this vote as a member of the Ethics Committee.
All those in favor of the Kunish motion to be recused from the vote sustaining the judgment of the president, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes. We go now to the roll call vote sustaining the judgment of the president. Members, the question before the body is, shall the decision of the president be the judgment of the Senate? A green vote upholds the decision of the president. A red vote overrules the decision of the president. The secretary will take the roll.
Mr. President. Mr. President, point of parliamentary inquiry.
We're under a roll call. For what purpose do you raise?
Oh, I'm sorry, we're under a vote.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Howe votes no.
Senator Howe votes no.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Utke votes no.
Senator Utke
Senator
votes no.
Hutke.
Senator Kunish.
Senator Kunish.
Mr. President, Senator Dibble votes aye,
Senator Dibble votes aye.
and Senator Port votes aye.
Senator Port votes aye.
Aye.
All members having voted with the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 31 aye votes and 24 nay votes, the judgment of the President is sustained. Senator Murphy.
Mr.
Thank
President?
you,
Senator
Mr.
Murphy has the
President.
floor.
Pursuant to Rule 6.3, I refer Resolution Number 35 to the Rules Committee.
Members, under Rule 6.3, a motion to refer a resolution to the Rules Committee is not debatable nor requires a roll call vote. The resolution is referred to the Committee on Rules.
Mr. President, point of parliamentary inquiry.
For what purpose do you rise?
Mr. President, when does the Rules Committee meet next?
Senator Drazkowski, I don't have that answer for you.
Wow.
We
Can
now
you
go
ask the
to
committee
Mr.
member?
President, can we ask the chair of the Rules Committee when they meet next?
Senator Drazkowski, we're under the orders of business. That question is out of order. We move now
Wow.
to the remaining of the motions and resolutions.
Mr. President, when can I
call
bring?
on
When
Senator Murphy for special orders.
That's crazy.
Thank you, Mr. President.
So it's like we'll get to it when we can. So the next rules hearing is, and that's Aaron Murphy. She could have easily answered. This is the one crazy thing of like, so the Rules and Administration Committee, that's Aaron Murphy's. You have Mark Johnson's in there. You have Ann Rast. Bobby, what's crazy. Bobby, hold on, man. I'm going to show y'all this shit because I don't think y'all are going to believe it without seeing this shit. And that's the crazy part. And it's like, why don't people? But it's okay. I'll show you. I don't got no problem showing y'all the committees or who's in them or any of that shit, right? So this is crazy. They put a Rules and Administration into a committee that has Bobby Joe as a member. And it's like, how I don't even get that shit. You have, okay, so here's Aaron Murphy. You have Ann Rest. And then you have minority member Mark Johnson, right? He's the Republican. And then you have Bobby Joe Champion, Julia Coleman, Nick France, Warren Limmer, John Marty, Miller, and Pappas. So Pappas and Miller are both in the Ethics Committee. So do you believe that we'll get an answer or we'll get any kind of truth and transparency out of this process? Because in my eyes, I honestly don't believe, because you're going to the same people. Aaron Murphy. That's the one crazy thing, is because Aaron Murphy is the one that kept on getting up during the little meeting and say, hey, why do we got to sit here and wait? So now we're going to go to the next upcoming meeting, right? So they meet. Let's see. I don't think they meet today. Nope. So no, the next meeting is, May 7th? No way. That's crazy. Oh, no, that's never mind. So that's their, damn. It looks like they ain't got no meetings. Let's see. All upcoming meetings. There ain't even nothing scheduled, I don't believe. Yeah, there's nothing scheduled. That's it. This is how we get through processes, right, in Minnesota. We sit here and we ask for things. And then, as you can see, the last meeting was the 7th, right? There is no meeting scheduled. How is that truth and transparency when you... I don't get this shit, right? Because they always tell us, this is what bothers me, right? When it comes to politics. Because when it's time to do the right thing, it takes forever to do it, right? But when it's time to do the wrong thing, y'all just hurry up and do it. You find out ways how to deflect, distract. So it doesn't surprise me that I'm seeing things about this special election and I think it's for the little dude that CD6 or some shit. I don't know. I know it's Justin Eichhorn's former seat, and it's wild. You know, they want to come on and talk about finances. We need to stop deflecting and distracting from what's really happening in Minnesota, because we're allowing bullshit to happen. I'm going to be honest. When you do things like this, here's the thing. This is why there are so many injustices in the state of Minnesota. And I want to show y'all, I'm not saying that Republicans are any fucking better, right? Because it's either side of evil, right? There is no good in this shit. I'm gonna be honest, right? And I've sat here and I thought about it over and over and over in the last couple days, right? Because I know that, you know, Brad Kohler and Reverend Tim, you know, running for governor. You have Philip Parrish. He hasn't picked no running mate yet. And then who else is already running? You know, I think it's Chris Seymour is his name. He's a black guy. And it's like, who do you, it's like, because I go through Brad Kohler's page and he wants to run as a Republican. Right. And I'm like, for what? For what? Because here's the thing of it is, other people are going to jump into this race, this endorsement process. Right. And I'm sure a lot of people will drop out, because you're probably going to see the likes of Kendall Qualls or Jensen didn't lose badly. You know what I'm saying? So he was a very good candidate. And that's what we need. We need somebody with, you know, name recognition, but you also need somebody that's going to stand up for you, right? You need somebody that's going to do what it takes to get across that goal line. And that's why I really don't mess with a lot of people when it comes to the politicians, because a lot of people, even with our community leaders, people have easily been affected by money. You know, not that it was you wanted to do. That's the whole thing about this, is a lot of people wanted to do what's right. It wasn't about, oh, I'm just gonna get into this and make all this money and just screw over the community. No, that wasn't the goal, right? It was to make it seem like things in the community were being done, but actually weren't. Because when you have those same talking pieces come up to the state capitol, or you're doing interviews with them same talking pieces, you get the same answers. Nothing ever changes, right? Because they want to tell you that violence is down, carjackings are blah, blah, blah. But why are you listening to the same people when there's a whole other set of people saying that's not the truth? But then you'll go, oh, they're lying. What do you mean they're lying? Wouldn't that be their experience, their perspective, their opinion? You have an opinion that everything is A-okay. That's not what we see in the streets. That's not what we see in the streets. You take the talking points that you want. You don't take everybody's opinion or perspective. You take what you need, what you want. Because here's the thing of it is, and I want people to remember, right, is that when I brought up trying to look at it, because there was a bill. It was like omnibus bill for like 53 million. Oh, here it goes. So it's for $53 million. They didn't say talk about their personal connections or any of that. And what did we hear about all these things in 2023 with this omnibus bill? That they were shoved down Republicans' throats. That they had so many hours to vote on these. They couldn't read it all. So it's like, you know, people, they say things, but then you don't do your own research. You just take it for value, face value. Why? Because that's your pastor? This is crazy as hell, because all the people that are making posts, right, on Facebook, if you go on Facebook and the difference between Twitter of the reactions, or even with the media, it's a total difference. Because I'll tell you right now is that Carrie Levin says that there was no conflict of interest. That's not what happened. That's not what happened yesterday. You get more narratives from your legacy media than you get the truth. And that's the whole problem in this, because I will tell you like this. Black press, who is Georgia Fort, came out and said, oh, congratulations, talking about Bobby Joe Champion. Why would you come out and lie? You haven't covered this at all, what was going on. So why would you cover it now? Why? The same thing with Feeding Our Future. You never covered that because your husband was attached to it. That's why you never covered Feeding Our Future, but you'll cover Keith Ellison's response or but not the whole situation. Is like that, to me, is wrong, right? So here is the post. Update. Senator Bobby Joe Champion has been cleared. Whoops, I didn't share it. Update. Senator Bobby Joe Champion has been cleared of all allegations. That's not true. That's why I wanted to play what happened, right? Because what happened, they didn't decide anything on 2023. What they decided on was 2025, that there was no conflicts of interest. So why don't you put out the whole story then instead of a narrative? Because I will tell you right now is that you got black men in our community arguing over this when they shouldn't be. Because I will tell you right now is that nothing. Here's the thing of it is that I want people to know. This man was not found innocent of the allegations. They want to put accusations, but I'll put allegations, right? Because I will tell you right now, there's 166 page ethics complaint. And these people went in. I'm going to see if I can pull it up. I want to see if I can. Hold on, I'm just going to take off my screen for a minute because I don't want y'all to see all my messages. But yeah, that's the case. There's a whole 166 page ethics complaint that, to be honest, a lot of people want to bypass, and that's where a lot of the information comes from. That's where the nuts and bolts, the peanut butter and jelly is. That's where all the things that you want to say that the newspapers and all these things are getting. The proof was in the pudding. It was all public information. So here is the ethics complaint on Bobby Joe, right? Let me pull it up a little bit bigger. All right, so here we go. So here is the complaint, and I'm going to read it to you. So attached is this letter. Attached to this letter is a complaint attached to this letter is a complaint regarding a complaint involving Senator Bobby Joe Champion. This complaint is prepared pursuant to the provisions of Senate Rule 55. By delivery of this letter, an attached complaint, it is hereby filed pursuant to Rule 55. We ask for the Subcommittee on Ethical Conduct to investigate these matters immediately and take action in accordance with this rule. We look forward to the subcommittee acting expeditiously on this complaint. Sincerely, I think there was 6 senators that signed it. It was Drzowski. Who else was it? It was I think one more person. Drzowski, I think Johnson was a part. No, Crone was. So here's the names. I don't know why this is. Makes me mad. Oh, Lord. Okay, so it was Lucero, Coyne, Drzowski, Green, Utke, and Wessenberger. So that was the 6. So who signed the complaint. And here is, I don't know why this is acting so weird. So here is the complaint in whole. All 166 pages. So here is the first part is that Senator Bobby Joe Champion, Senators Mark Croin, Steve Duzowski, Steve Green, Eric Lucero, Paul Yuki, and Nathan Wessenberger. I think Nathan Wessenberger is the Beaver guy. How can you, the Beaver guy? Not that I don't mean to make jokes about it right now, but he is, I think that's the Beaver guy. Being duly sworn, state and allege under oath the following based upon information and belief. Senator Bobby Joe Champion violated Senate Rules 56.1 and 56.3 by sponsoring legislation appropriating money to a legal client without disclosing the client relationship. Senator Champion authored legislation in 2023 and 2025 directing money to this client, including legislation that was signed into law in 2023 and sent $3 million to a client. On March 16th, 2023, Senator Champion introduced Senate File 2970, which allocated $3 million in fiscal year 2024 and $3 million in fiscal year 2025 to Community Action Partnership of Hennepin County, of which Community Action Partnership was directed to give 1.5 to 21 days apiece in each year 24 and 25. So they got exhibits. And number two, there's 25 complaints allegations that they have. I shouldn't say they're all allegations because some of it is, it's public information. There's no hiding from it. But on March 20th, 2023, the Minnesota Senate Jobs and Economic Development Committee heard Senate File 2970. And Senator Champion presented the bill with Reverend Jerry McAfee representing 21 days apiece. At the committee hearing, Senator Champion and Reverend McAfee presented testimony to the committee regarding the work of Salem Inc. in 21 days apiece. Minutes from the committee hearing did not show Reverend McAfee or Senator Champion disclosing a relationship, nor does video of the hearing. On May 16, 2023, the Minnesota Senate passed Senate File 3035, the Omnibus Jobs, Economic Development, Labor, and Industry Appropriations Conference Committee report, which included Senate File 2970. Both bills were authored by Senator Champion. As chair of the Jobs and Economic Development Committee, Senator Champion was responsible for selecting bills for inclusion in the Omnibus bill. Governor Walz signed the bill into law May 24, 2023. There's an exhibit, that's Exhibit C. On March 25th, 2025, Senator Champion introduced Senate File 2978, which would appropriate $2 million in each fiscal year, 26 and 27, to Community Action Partnership of Hennepin County, and directs the organization to send $500,000 in each of the fiscal year 26 and 27 to 21 days apiece. They put an exhibit up there, that's D. On April 2nd, 2025, the Minnesota Senate Jobs and Economic Development Committee heard SF 2978. Senator Champion and Reverend McAfee presented the bill, offered testimony, and did not acknowledge a prior relationship. In that same hearing, under questioning about the difference between Salem Inc. and 21 days apiece, Senator Champion clarified that the appropriation was to support the 21 days apiece initiative of Salem Inc. Damn. Crazy. So in the same hearing, Salem Inc. submitted documentary evidence to the committee hearing outlining 21 days apiece as a project of the organization. On April 4, 2024, the Minnesota Reformer published a news story highlighting a professional relationship between Senator Champion and Reverend McAfee. It reported that Senator Champion had represented McAfee and Salem Inc. as their attorney at law in several financial disputes. According to the article, Senator Champion acknowledged the legal work, saying it was pro bono and that because it had concluded in December 2022, prior to the state of the legislative session, he did not need to disclose the relationship to the public are his colleagues. The Minnesota court records, this is number 9. The Minnesota court records online portal shows Senator Champion as the lead attorney for the case numbers. They put the cases, you can go on there. All 3 cases were filed in 2022 and included statements of representation from Senator Champion as attorney to Salem Inc. and Jerry McAfee. So, I mean, a lot of that is like I said, again, public information. I know a lot of people, well, I don't want to look at that. Well, I advise you to shut the fuck up then. The schedule of the above cases shows they begun in 2022 and concluded in 2023, Exhibit J. Final orders filed February 21st, April 18th, and February 8th. All 3 files were 2023. According to a Star Tribune article dated April 8th, 2025, Senator Champion's office had also had further connections to 21 Days of Peace, with 21 Days of Peace, with a member of his Senate staff reported as also serving as the executive administrator of 21 Days of Peace recently as 2021. No end date to that position has been reported. That's Shamika. It's crazy. That's why I laugh at some of these people that come and comment. It's like, shut up, because you don't even know. Like, that's the one part. If you're not willing to read the information, like, to be honest, shut up. Shut up. It's okay with being wrong. You know, we always don't have to be right. And that's the one thing about this, is that we are all learning to do better. And we are all learning. I shouldn't say all of us, because some of us are learning to do better, so that we understand that knowing, because when we do better, people follow your actions, right? There's a lot of followers out here in America. So if you're doing the right things, there shouldn't be no questions. There wouldn't be if people were more transparent, we wouldn't have situations like this. We wouldn't, there would be no need for this. None, there wouldn't be none. And this is the sad thing is that situations like this make people look in the past and bring up situations that might hurt others. You know, that's the one thing, is that now you brought 2 different pastors, Clarence Hightower and Alfred Johnson. And then not only it's Jerry McAfee, we have Al Flowers, we have Clarence Hightower, all are reverends, are pastors. They have flocks of constituents in North Minneapolis. So we're supposed to believe that none of these connections made you guys control and be gatekeepers of North Minneapolis? Because everywhere you looked, you had strings. It didn't matter if it was We Push for Peace, because they were a part. It was a whole group of them. And it was a group of 10 that went to the state capitol with the Black agenda. And how much actually went back to the streets? Because I will tell you like this, is that people will tell you to vote for the lesser of the 2 evils. I'm telling you not to vote for the evils at all. Democrat or Republican. I'm telling you to that. This is the one thing that really bugs me, is how are we supposed to get to change? How are we supposed to get to reform if people don't get involved? I said, to be honest, I don't know. I don't know how you get involved, or, you know, you educate the people and make them understand, because you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it. You know what I'm saying? You can make them, you can lead them. You can't make them do anything. It's about choices. And a lot of people have sold their souls, sold their morals or integrity for cash. And it's crazy. I don't understand it. You know, I thought when I got into this, it would all be about, you know, what's right and what's wrong. But now I'm seeing it's all about political parties. You know, they only fuck with you in Minneapolis if you're a liberal, because you don't get no love, no kind of consideration or appreciation if you are a conservative, if you're a Republican. I'm going to say conservative because I'm not a Republican. I'm not. And here's the thing. I know I'm a registered Republican voter, but that doesn't mean that I agree with their values, because there is no conservative party in Minnesota. You know, my executive choice was a write-in. I wrote in Andy Williams. You know, that's the one. And the rest of it was the lesser of two evils in my area. You know, and that's why I really don't fuck with a lot of black people, because what kind of black people are you working for? What kind of black people are you fighting for? And that's why I really don't mess with a lot of people, because then you start to find out it's not black Americans they're fighting for. It's black Africans who weren't born here, who either migrated or their birth dates are January 1st. They have no records. So it's like, how are you fighting for black people to get ahead? And that's why you see, because there was just an article that came out about the housing gap in Minnesota. The racial disparities were bad. It was bad. And it's like, why don't people talking about this? Because it doesn't fit their narrative. And it's sad, because it's like, why isn't this information get out? Because if more people discuss this or had these conversations and you've seen what was going on, you could honestly tell. You would be able to tell. No, they just came out with an article. Oh, so here it is, 23 hours ago. So we're gonna play it and listen. If I can play it, I don't know if I can or not. Oh, yep, I can listen. So we're gonna listen. 6 minutes.
Homeownership data reveals widened racial gap for Black Minnesotans. A new report shows dramatic variance in homeownership rates among cultural groups such as Dakota, Somali, and Hmong Minnesotans. By Rachel Hutton, the Minnesota Star-Tribune, April 24, 2025 at 6 a.m. Dekevia Cole hangs out with her fiancé, Quantel Clark, and their children, Armani, 7, Amiris, 2, and Amira, 5, in their new home in Minneapolis on Thursday. Renee Jones Schneider, the Minnesota Star-Tribune. Dekevia Cole's family moved to Minnesota from Mississippi when she was a child, and her mother struggled to afford housing. The family bounced between living with others and in a shelter before renting in North Minneapolis. Last winter, Cole, who is Black, became the first homeowner in her family. "I'm paving the way for my siblings and children," she said. Minnesota's homeownership rate has remained steady since the 1970s, with slightly more than 70% of all households owning their residences. But the stability of that surface-level data hides dramatic variation among racial groups, particularly when they're more narrowly defined. "When you take a closer examination, that's when you see real disparities," said Jeff Howison, senior research analyst at the Minnesota State Demographic Center. Past reports on Minnesotans' homeownership rates have found significant inequality among broad racial categories, such as white, Black, or African American and Asian. But new data from the 2020 census, the U.S. Census Bureau's most comprehensive effort to document in detail race, ethnicity, and tribal groups, has allowed researchers to assess the nuances within those categories. A recent report Howison created for the Demographic Center reveals differing homeownership rates between Dakota and Ojibwe people in Minnesota, for example, as well as between U.S.-born African Americans and those of newer African immigrants. Howison also used the disaggregated data to analyze how homeownership rates for the detailed groups have changed over time. Some showed substantial gains in recent decades. For example, homeownership rates of Asian Americans are closing in on those of white Minnesotans, who have the highest rates of any racial group, at 77%, with Hmong Americans showing the largest increase. But for other groups, disparities have worsened. In Minnesota, the well-documented homeownership gap between Black and white Americans looks more like a chasm, and one that has dramatically eroded. While the national rate of Black homeownership has remained around 45% since the 1980s, for Minnesota's Black or African American population, as well as that group's U.S.-born subset, specifically, the rate has declined by double digits during that period. Cole is a member of that cohort who has defied the trend. But she said that being surrounded by renters gave her little knowledge about credit and mortgages until she took a first-time homebuyer class. Working with a mentor from the Minneapolis housing nonprofit PRG Inc., Cole made a game plan to improve her credit score and save for a down payment. Now that she has settled into her new home in North Minneapolis, Cole said she hopes others who are unfamiliar with homeownership can learn of its benefits. Related coverage. Business. Housing Advocate says with the right help, homeownership is attainable for all Minnesotans. Minnesota Star Tribune. Homeownership gap in the Twin Cities is highest in the nation. Culture. Confronting the Black homeownership gap in Min. The resources are not there for a lot of people and families like me, she said. Here are the Demographic Center report's most notable findings, organized by broad racial minority groups. Black or African American households. Before the Great Migration of African Americans north from the southern states, beginning in the 1950s, Minnesota's Black residents made up less than 1% of the state's population. Today, that number has risen to about 7%. Unlike any other broad racial minority group, these households have increasingly been living in rented housing. In 1970, the home ownership rate for Minnesota's Black or African American households was 42%. That number has fallen to 26% in recent years, less than half the state's overall home ownership rate of 72% and significantly lower than the 46% of Black or African American homeowner households nationwide. Howison found substantial variation in homeownership rates within the category's subgroups. Rates have been increasing for several newer African immigrant communities, including Ethiopians and Liberians. People of Somali descent make up the largest.
I want to stop it right there because that is an important number, right? Is that people of the Somali descent make up the largest group of African immigrants in Minnesota, and their households have the lowest home ownership rates of any subgroup at 12%. But if you look at the newer groups in Minnesota from Africa who have home ownership rates, it's not us. It's every other. Here's the thing of it is, look at that. U.S. born African Americans, right? But if you look in the subcategories, when it goes Ethiopian, we're last. We're third. You know what I'm saying? We're way behind. Way behind. And I will say Somalians did make a motherfucking jump. God damn. But let's get back into this.
Largest group of African immigrants in Minnesota, and their households have the lowest homeownership rates of any subgroup, at 12%. But that number has increased from essentially zero in the 1990s, when the first refugees of the Somali Civil War arrived in Minnesota. The most striking trend among the detailed groups was the falling home ownership rate for U.S.-born Black Minnesotans. It dropped from nearly 40% in the 1980s to 28% in 2020. Looking at Black or African American Minnesotans overall, Howison noted another alarming shift, revealed when homeownership rates are parsed by age. In 1990, homeownership rates generally changed for Black Minnesotans in the way they did for Minnesotans overall. Rates rose throughout the working years and then declined after retirement. In upper age brackets, homeowners tend to move in with family, to rental housing, or other senior communities or group facilities. But in recent years, homeownership rates for Black and African American Minnesotans essentially plateaued in the mid-40s age bracket. African Americans who are in their 60s are now no more likely to own their home than those in their 40s, despite having 2 decades worth of additional earning potential. This suggests members of the Black working and middle classes have lost considerable financial stability, a trend that will have ripple effects on subsequent generations. It tells us something about the larger economic conditions, and the larger paths that people travel over the course of their life, and those avenues for upward mobility, right. Howison said. You don't have your house to potentially pass on to your kids, or to have that kind of generational wealth building.
That's one thing that you're not going to hear. What Robert just posted is that this is all by design since the 70s. This isn't something new. These are things that our elders, our community leaders that are elders, should have been paying attention to, but they weren't because they were selling out their souls. You know, I heard Ben Yuko this morning talk about Ron Edwards. And I've highly gone through Ron's website, you know, Minneapolis Story. And I just continue to read. And I believe that his 7 solutions are a way that we can get these generational curses over with. We can eradicate them. But I feel like there's so much pushback in the Black community, and we can't tell the difference between right and wrong. And that's why we don't get answers. That's why we don't get solutions. But nobody wants to, they don't want to talk about that. Just like all by design since the 70s. Nobody wants to talk about that because then you have to break open a can of worms that they don't want you to.
Building. Hispanic households. While Minnesota's Hispanic population has grown substantially since the 1980s, from 1% to about 6% today, the group's homeownership rates have hovered around 50% throughout. The rates are similar for members of the largest subset within that group, Minnesotans of Mexican descent, and those of the next largest, such as Minnesotans of Puerto Rican descent. Asian households. Asian households in Minnesota have the highest rates of homeownership among racial or ethnic minority groups, 64% in recent years. This reflects a significant increase from the 1980 rate of 44%. Rates for many subgroups, including Chinese and Vietnamese, made steady gains over recent decades, with Hmong residents showing the sharpest increase. Hmong refugees began arriving in Minnesota in the mid-1970s, fleeing the Vietnam War's devastation of their homeland in Laos and the subsequent communist takeover. In 1990, when fewer than 20,000 Hmong people lived in Minnesota, the group's homeownership rate was slightly more than 10%. In recent years, with Minnesota's Hmong population approaching 100,000, the rate has increased to about 60%. One cohort of today's Hmong homeowners presumably reflects the increased financial security of that initial group. The first generation arrives, and they get a little toehold, Howison said, of immigrants finding employment and establishing social networks. Then you have upward social mobility, and home ownership is a marker of that. American Indian and Alaska Native households. Home ownership rates for American Indian and Alaska Native populations in Minnesota have ranged from 43% to 51% since the 1980s, but there is variation between Minnesota's largest tribes, the Dakota and Ojibwe. While Howison acknowledges that historic data, which was pulled from decennial censuses and American community surveys, has a greater margin of error for smaller groups, it showed that Ojibwe homeownership rates have remained steady, at about 50% since 1980. Meanwhile, Dakota homeownership rates roughly doubled, from about 30% to 60% since 1990.
It was things that, yeah, my bad. I don't even know how long I was talking for. I think it was a couple minutes. I didn't even know I was muted. But it's when you go back and you look at those things, you know, with these subcategories, when it comes to African Americans, you know, I want to say there is Ethiopian, Somalian, Nigerian. There's all different sorts. But we never want to have that discussion because everybody wants to tell y'all it's black. It doesn't matter what kind of black, it's black. That's why you get people all gassed up over these. I'm not saying that it's not in history, because it is. But it's not, we don't have to make it our history. Don't let these people fearmonger you. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be 100 honest. When I heard everybody talking about, you know, I don't see people over here talking about real ID, but y'all talking about all these other things when it comes to the autism. Oh, they're going to do an autism registry, but y'all signing up for real ID like that isn't a registry. Dumbasses. How you signing up for one and not the other? I don't even get that. Y'all doing this real ID shit real easy. Y'all making them allow y'all to be a register. Because here's the whole thing with real ID. We just passed driver's license for all. If you don't have no birth certificate, which a lot of immigrants don't have a birth certificate, have to be a U.S. citizen, you're not getting a real ID. So how are you not signing up for some kind of registry? Y'all are so quick. People are so quick to go with it. No wonder why we live in the economy in the world that we live in, because people are scared to buck up and fight the system. You're scared to buck up and fight the system because you'd rather get paid. You want to be comfortable. You want to take those trips to Jamaica. You want to go to Puerto Rico. You want to go to England, Amsterdam, Abu Dhabi. Because it was never about taking care of the community. You wanted to be selfish. You wanted to live your best life. You didn't want the community to be able to live their best life in peace, harmony. Instead, we're in chaos. We're in chaos. And I will never understand that, because I will tell you like now is that I'm going to play something that a lot of people are probably like, no, that's not the way, man. Listen to this interview, right? In Minneapolis. So you're going to hear Jamil Jackson and Paul Bloom, right? Fox 9. And it showed me, this interview was like, these aren't your friends. If I don't know how many articles I've seen with so-called activists or nonprofit leaders, and y'all think these niggas are your friends, man, I don't know when y'all gonna stop talking to the media, because they always, no matter how much you want to try to correct yourself, they'll make the innocent look guilty and the guilty look innocent. I'm gonna say that again. They make the innocent look guilty, and they make the guilty look innocent. Did I say that? I'm out of. So they make the innocent look guilty and the guilty look innocent.
To an account that you showed to me today.
Absolutely.
You stand behind it all.
Absolutely. I mean, I have no choice. I have to give them this documentation. I have to submit it to them in order for me to receive another form of payment.
Well, he works with some of Minneapolis's most at-risk children, trying to keep them safe and out of trouble. But now this violence prevention contractor is under some scrutiny, accused of double billing the city of Minneapolis and Hennepin County. Now, that is according to an internal city audit that has been obtained by the Fox 9 investigators.
And as Paul Bloom tells us tonight, that audit has turned up more concerns about billing and reimbursement practices.
So I'm kind of confused as to who, if anybody, would come up with these accusations.
Jamil Jackson says he only learned about the allegations against his nonprofit, Change Equals Opportunity, after we showed him this internal city audit.
And again, no disrespect to you, because we have a good relationship, but, you know, for you to be the initial person to reach out to me from an inquiry, you know, point of view on this without having any knowledge of it, yeah, pretty upset.
Jackson's organization has received $704,000 in city contracts over the last few years to work with some of Minneapolis's most troubled youth. He insists his organization is available 24/7 to help kids, including those accused of murder, the Kia carjackers, and the then 10-year-old child who took this joyride through a school playground last fall.
If you ask me, I'm not getting paid enough.
But according to this audit, the city now wants to withhold final payment to Jackson's organization while it investigates potential misuse of funds and insufficient documentation.
This is how much that we've spent on client assistance. This is how much that we've spent on lunches and food and meals for the kids. And
Jackson showed the Fox 9 investigators everything he says he thought he was required to provide, including child progress reports, payments, staff salaries, and expenses.
By no means do I think I'm just a super genius, but I do think I do a great job of organizing my bills and my money to make sure that everything's on the up and up.
The audit also questions, quote, the accuracy and time submitted to the city and Hennepin County because Jackson was billing both for 80 to 90-hour work weeks. And when they're saying you're double billing for 90 hours a week, are you working 180 hours a week?
Technically, yeah, I do. But in respects to this, I don't work by the hour, and I've never agreed to work for an hourly wage as it relates to this work. This is salary work.
Jackson is also accused of handing out stipends to kids through untraceable cash payments involving checks he wrote to himself.
These stipends allow us to incentivize them to not just come and be here, but then to stay out of trouble.
The audit was required as part of a legal settlement reached last year after the city was accused in this lawsuit of mismanaging millions of dollars in violence prevention funding.
These types of invoices were routinely paid for years.
Right.
The Fox 9 investigators spent months reviewing invoices, receipts, and time cards that raised even more questions about how violence intervention work was being monitored by the city. Earlier this year, we took our findings to the Community Safety Commissioner. Do you think it's worth auditing what has happened here historically in the contracting and oversight, or would you rather turn the page and just look forward from here?
I mean, audit is part of the settlement agreement, so that has to happen. But I'm in a position where I want to just move forward. I want to continue to build on the successes that we've had.
The commissioner's office declined to comment this week on the internal audit, but Jackson maintains his nonprofit is now being blamed for the city's issues.
It's just about the incompetence of the way that they've gone about doing things, and now they're trying to come back on us and make it seem like it's our organizations who haven't done things the right way, when frankly they just haven't required this.
Jackson claims Minneapolis still owes him approximately $175,000 from his most recent contract. He was not selected in this latest round of violence prevention funding that the city is doling out for youth intervention programming, but he still holds a contract to work with at-risk kids through Hennepin County.
Damn. Here's what I want to say, right? I do agree with Jamil. The city allowed a lot of these things that they're asking for now, that instead of teaching these organizations, I'm not saying, here's the thing of it is, Jamil hasn't came up a lot in my research. He's came up some. He hasn't came up a whole lot. But damn, it's crazy as hell. Even with I already knew about Muhammad, but some of the, even for Rome, it's all these names that barely were in, a lot of this shit are really coming out more of basically doing the same kind of shit. But again, I will tell you this, is that the city of Minneapolis and our state legislator allowed these things to happen. Because first of all, there is no type of accountability. There's no type of responsibility. Because when something happens, it's either a rumor, you're a hater, you're a liar, you're envy, you're jealous, instead of it just being the truth. Here's my thing of it is, right? Because I don't know how many activists in Minneapolis have blocked me. Jonathan Mason, Cortez Rice, Trahern Cruz. For what? Because they don't want their lies to be exposed. So, and I know Jamil had just made a post this morning about Mason. It is what it is. You know what I'm saying? It's like all I've ever asked is to see the paperwork. All I've ever asked is to see the receipts, because Minneapolis allowed y'all to put any kind of financial numbers behind certain things without documentation, without receipts, but just you could put, well, we paid out this much. Well, where's the receipts? Where's the time sheets? So y'all weren't really, when it came down to the spreadsheets, when it came down to the transparency of your organizations, you didn't want to do that. And it's the whole thing of why I say that. I'm not saying this about Jamil's, but a lot of this that I see in Minneapolis, or even when I see nationally, is a lot of these nonprofits, especially in urban inner city communities. I won't say urban inner city communities. You see former gang leaders, but then you see the structures of their organizations. It's the same thing of what I grew up in gangs. Because if you don't have no kind of structure, you have chaos. And that's what we're seeing, is that in Minneapolis, when it comes to our government, there was no structure, because it was we're going to blame this person and we're going to blame them. So we never get to an answer. Do we just get more questions that we need answered? That's what all this is about. There was never no oversight. There was never no, and a lot of these people, I think, that weren't using it fraudulently. There was some, yes. Others, I think they're just thrown in the mix because of it's easier to point the finger somewhere else than at us. And that's why I find a feel with these two that have came out this week with Ferone and with Jamil, is that I kind of feel like in my eyes it's finger pointing, because I just had this conversation with Marcus about Ferone not too long ago. I was like, damn, watch. Because when these contracts came out and when Jerry McAfee was complaining, blah, 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 you know what I'm saying? It was Ferone was in it, and there were some other individuals. That's when I've been knew about Jamil. Not saying anything bad, you know what I'm saying? Or anything like that. I'm just saying of like these names that are all coming up now in the news media have already been there. And certain people have already talked about it. I'm not saying, this is not me saying that Jamil was doing anything illegal or fraudulently or wasteful. I'm saying of like, we as individuals do what we're allowed. We only do what we can and what we're allowed. Because I will tell you like now, if you stop a person, and if you, I'll say justice, if there's some kind of responsibility, you won't see that same shit, especially if it comes to accountability. If there's accountability, we understand that when we were kids and we used to touch the, the stove, or, yeah, we used to get burnt or whatever, but our parents, at least if our parents were parents, they said that was bad, hot, or whatever. But I'm starting to see that a lot of parents don't really care. Because a hard head makes for a soft ass. Over time, these hard heads, because nobody was holding them accountable. So then your ego goes up. You feel untouchable. I know that feeling. Here's the thing of it is, when I was out here dealing drugs, I felt untouchable. When I would go to jail and was able to bail out, and I'd be seeing other motherfuckers in there sad as hell. Sad as hell. But I could bail out. Because I used to be the one that couldn't bail out. You know what I'm saying? I couldn't bail out. But then I started to realize that these people, this is when the whole thing of it was, I was starting to, it was about 2003, 2004, is when I realized that they're not for you. Your friends, you think they're your friends just because you maybe grew up with them, or you're in the same gang, or no. It's a dog eat dog world out here. Nobody has, here's the one thing that's missing. Everybody got love for each other, but nobody got loyalty. Because money can buy egos, can buy your morals, can buy your integrity, And some people ain't like that. Some people, oh yeah, I'll take this, and man, fuck him. This ain't no, but other people ain't like that. Other people ain't like that. There's more loyalty in them to that person. That's the one crazy thing, because I know that here's one thing that I know, right? Because even I'll say this about Reverend Tim Christopher, we have our problems, and I love that man. And I know that sometimes he, can play both sides. I'll say that. But I understand that this man isn't going to do anything intentionally to try to hurt me. Not even because even if I believe that it's almost accidental, I'm man enough, and I believe he's man enough that we can have conversations, and we've done that. We've done that. You know what I'm saying? So there doesn't have to be, when adults and men have conversations, we can come to solutions. The same thing with women. If you put a woman that is about everybody, that isn't only about if she's white or if she's black or, well, I'm not, no. That's somebody that you already know has been bought and paid for, because it's all about their labels. It's all about, sort of fuck isn't about things that matter. So this morning, I wanted to talk about this because this fucking blew my mind. And it's like, God damn, Adrian, when are you going to learn? I didn't even know he was still in Minneapolis or in Minnesota. Shit. So, but this morning, Viking legend, Adrian Peterson was arrested for DWI in Hennepin County.
Developing this morning, former Vikings great Adrian Peterson out of the Hennepin County Jail after being booked early this morning for driving while intoxicated. According to court records, Peterson was booked at 5:15 this morning and released just after 7:30. According to State Patrol, Peterson was pulled over near Richfield for going 83 in a 55 and arrested on suspicion of DWI. Peterson was just at the Vikings draft party last night. We'll be following the story all day.
Damn.
Make sure you stick with KARE 11 News now.
That's crazy. So he was in the jail for basically under 2 hours, a little under 2 hours. And y'all will be talking about this story all day, KARE 11. Fuck out of here. He's an old NFL player. but because he's black, why aren't you talking about Gilbert Arenas' son, who had a badass car accident yesterday? And I hope he's in people's prayers, because I will tell you like this, it should have never happened. I'll pull something up, because that whole situation was shitty. And it should have never happened to Elijah. And I hope he is, because I will tell you like this. I've seen a couple of his ball games when they were on, I've seen the highlights or whatever on. But here is a video. And it's crazy as hell, because a lot of this shit is, oh, fuck, man. It's like we all can have bad days. And that bad day for some of us could end a life. Could end a life. I will say that. And prayers to Elijah, to Gilbert, and I hope that I know he was in a coma last night. They had put him in one, a medically induced one. But I really hope that it wasn't life-threatening. I hope that it wasn't, career ending, like we've seen with, hopefully, thank God Bronny wasn't. We've seen with Shaquille O'Neal, one of his Shaquille O'Neal's sons, with his heart murmur. I think it was a heart, some of his heart. But he's playing back ball. So we can't overcome this, and I hope Elijah does overcome this. But I want you to see he was driving a Cybertruck. But watch, because I shouldn't laugh, and because I'm frustrated. You know what I'm saying? And it's like.
More about a fiery Cybertruck crash that happened early this morning in a local neighborhood. The teen injured in that crash is Elijah Arenas, a five-star basketball recruit for USC, and also the son of former NBA player Gilbert Arenas. Eyewitness News reporter Tim Caputo spoke to a neighbor who heard the crash and then rushed to help. He joins us live tonight in Winnetka. Tim.
And Mark, this is where the crash happened. You see behind me some high school friends have been stopping by all day long. You could actually see the damage on the tree behind me. In fact, some of the Cybertruck lodged into the trunk of the tree itself. Just a kind of sense of how impactful this wreck was. Behind the wheel of that Cybertruck, the son of a former NBA star who had just completed two of the best high school basketball seasons in LA history. Security video only catches the tail end of this early morning crash in Winnetka, but it was so loud it woke dozens who lived nearby.
Feel like an earthquake and the big explosion. So, and it's when I wake up and I say, okay, what's going on?
A Tesla Cybertruck driven by 18-year-old Elijah Arenas, a five-star high school basketball prospect and son of former NBA star Gilbert Arenas, hit a hydrant and then a tree on Corbin Avenue just before 5 this morning. The truck caught fire, and as the hydrant spewed water into the sky, the fire was pouring smoke both outside and inside the Cybertruck, with Arenas stuck inside.
Wow.
Brian Sandoval, who was woken up by the crash, grabbed a fire extinguisher, sprinted over to help, and realized the driver couldn't get out.
I heard some banging from coming inside the car, so we knew someone was in there. So tried putting out the fire, didn't help. Tried smashing the back window on the driver's side. Couldn't do it, couldn't figure out how to open up the door. So basically just saw the driver's side window slightly ajar, so just pulled that down, and he stuck his hand out. We grabbed it, pulled them out, and shortly afterwards the fire department came.
Arenas, who committed to play at USC next season, was rushed to the hospital and is now reportedly in an induced coma. USC basketball head coach Eric Musselman posting, quote, "Our thoughts and prayers are with Elijah and his family following this morning's accident. Please keep him, his teammates and friends, and the entire Arenas family in your prayers." Elijah's mother posting on Instagram a simple but straightforward plea, "I need all your prayers." Arenas attended nearby Chatsworth High School, and those who followed his budding basketball career are in shock.
I mean, the emotions are still hitting, but it's kind of that, you think the guy's Superman, you think he's indestructible, and then something like this happens, and it's just terrible.
Those who pulled him from his burning truck told me Arenas did manage to tell them he was alone in the car. It's unclear what caused the single-car crash, but with smoke filling the truck, it's obvious that seconds mattered, and Sandoval's quick thinking likely saved Arenas' life.
It hit more when he stuck his arm out, because then, he was still there, he was still with us, and just at that point, it's like there was nothing more important than just taking him out.
Wow.
A very humble young man, certainly heroic work early this morning. As for the car itself, it is registered to Gilbert Arenas, Elijah's dad. No word from Gilbert himself. He does host a daily podcast, but understandably, they canceled it for the day. We're live.
Wow. So prayers up to Gilbert and Elijah and Laura. Everybody knows Gilbert. If you watch Gilbert's Arena, he has a daily podcast. And especially Elijah. Elijah was cold. Same thing with Keon Anthony. Two up and coming superstars that their dads were NBA. One was a point guard and the other one was small forward. We all know Carmelo Anthony. Everybody, that nigga was, he could get on the sidelines and whoop, whoop. Same thing with Gilbert. Gilbert was one that would take it to the hole. So I liked watching Elijah and even Keon. The same thing with the Boozer twins, Cooper Flagg. It just be some wild ass shit. It'd be some wild ass shit. Damn. What a day. It's Friday. We talked about today, it was basically about the resolution to remove Senator Champion as president of the Senate. We also talked about, I just showed y'all that Minneapolis violence interrupter accused of the double billing and audit. And we also talked about the housing disparity in Minnesota when it comes to these subcategories, right? Since they want to sub-label us. You know what I'm saying? And we see Black Americans, Black Minnesotans who are from America are left behind, but all the immigrants, not saying that they don't deserve housing, not saying that they don't deserve, but we should, Americans, this is our land. This is our home. And to be left behind the way that we are, it is sickening to me. Because all I can understand is that money is the ruler of all evil. Because when they ruled that money, when they ruled that purse string, They think they're untouchable. So what's happening to Bobby is because he thought he was untouchable. He thought he was Tony Montana. He thought he was Pablo Escobar. Same thing with like Sharif and them. Oh man, listen, everything that you believe is will start to crumble. Everything that is evil will start to crumble. It takes time. Look at, what's crazy is I don't really want to speak on it too much, but with Club Shay Shay, with Shannon Sharp and his rape allegations, January 3rd, 2024, he did an interview with Cat Williams. Cat said that 2024 was the year of the truth. The year 2025 was the year of retribution. Is that all these big dick deviants would be brought to their knees. And what are we seeing? All these who got that big ass ego are being brought to their knees. It doesn't matter. Here's the thing of it is, people can call these conservative or Republican talking points, whatever. Man, the truth is the truth. You can label it whatever you want to, but the truth is the truth. That's all I can say, is the truth is the truth. No matter what you want to call it, you can call a person a hater, you just jealous, you lying, you can say whatever you want to, but the truth is the truth. Paperwork doesn't lie. People do. If you can't explain your connections, or if you can't explain certain situations, what are we supposed to believe? So I hope everybody has a great weekend. Get out, enjoy it. It's raining here in Minnesota, has been for the last couple of days. It's supposed to be really nice tomorrow. So if you're out, get out, enjoy yourself, but also learn, educate yourself, educate how you can do better. Educate how you can help your community. So with that being said, win or fail, freedom or jail, heaven or hell, wish me well. And here is Belly Gang Cushington. Call me back, Cush. And I'll see y'all on Monday, same time, same place.
Automatic voice message system. At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
I just called you, let you know, boy, your brother got shot. I was just trying to let you see what's going on in the other world.
I've been going through some shit. I don't want to do nothing but hustle. Nigga, I don't need answer the phone. I need to leave them trap house, send them cameras alone. I just ran off on the plug, I'm trying to stand on my own. Trying to tell my little boy to leave them pampers alone. And he like down there 4. I used to leave him in the car while I go scam in the store. He used to be right on the couch when niggas come and buy bags. He used to watch his iPad while I handle my folks. I got my cheddar up, got my mozzarella up. I just hit Miami, felt the plug, I might just set them up. I just got a call from 2 bitches in the library of the hotel I'm staying at. Like, boy, you better let us up.
Hello?
Boy, you better let us fuck. All you do is free up with them bricks and then you scale them up. All you do is hit them with remix and then you swell them up. All you do is wrap up them little pounds and then you bell them up. Nigga, I don't need answer the phone. I need to leave them trap house, send them cameras alone. I just ran off on the plug, I'm trying to stand on my own. Trying to tell my little boy to leave them pampers alone. And he like down there 4. I used to leave him in the car while I go scam in the store. He used to be right on the couch when niggas come and buy bags. He used to watch